Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome you today at Humboldt-University, the audience of this lecture, and especially you, Minister Zaorálek. Humboldt-University, just as much as Berlin itself, is a historic place. In fact, 6 years ago, the university celebrated the 200 years of its foundation. On the one hand, some parts of the history are very impressive. For example, it was the very first university based on the principles of the unity of teaching and research, implemented by Wilhelm von Humboldt, influenced, among others, by the reform ideas of Johann Gottlieb Fichte and Friedrich Schleiermacher. The modern concept of higher education should provide students with an all-round humanist education and assure the freedom to teach and to conduct research without state interventions. In reference to this independence stood the second value. In regards of the faculty, it is the state of solitude that Humboldt stressed. This is an intellectual heritage this university is proud of. But on the other hand, we should not forget that Berlin University was also one of the leading universities in the Nazi dictatorship. The expulsion of Jewish academics and students, as well as political opponents of fascism, and the murdering of some of them did great damage also to the university. On the 10th of May 1933, students and lecturers took part in the burning of books in front of the law faculty. After that, and in the subsequent war years, many academics left Berlin University. With a great loss of scientific potential, the university had to shut down until 1946. It was reopened in the capital of a new German state to come, the German Democratic Republic. After the fall of the wall in 1989, Humboldt University faced the next change and had to be relaunched in the Federal Republic of Germany. One of the lessons learned in this history of ruptures is that solitude is fine, but not sufficient when it comes to political challenges. This is especially true in a society of interacting globalization, where crises and conflicts, as well as opportunities, need to be addressed conjointly. This may not always be easy, as opinions differ and compromises are often difficult to achieve. Nevertheless, students and scholars have to show their openness to all the democratic forces around the university. As academia, we should take care for the societal resources of academia, for peace, prosperity, and social equality. We are situated in the core of Europe. Our cooperation with European institutions and European partner universities is crucial for our scientific successes. There are reasons enough to become involved when Europe's agenda is concerned. So we are very glad that you, Minister Zaorálek, will talk to us about your ideas of Europe's future. You are not only an important politician from a Central European country, you are also a colleague, a university teacher for political philosophy and ethics. That might be the appropriate intellectual combination in order to interpret the current challenges successfully. Thank you for coming again. Thank you.
Dear Minister, dear Vice President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Forum Constitutiones Europae with the speech of Lubomír Zaorálek, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. He will share with us his views on a fascinating and very important subject, Germany's strengths and Europe's weakness, overcoming the paradox. This is the last FCE, Forum Constitutiones event I am organizing before my dear successor, Professor Matthias Ruffert, fully takes over the Walter Hallstein Institute, including these speeches series. And this is an opportunity, first of all, to say some thanks. First of all, to the Stiftung Mercator, which is making these speeches possible and entered with us in a wonderful cooperation. Second, but not in a hierarchical way, I would like to thank Gabriele Müller for her restless work in making sure that these events run smoothly and successfully since years. Many thanks indeed to both of them, and all best wishes for the future and the continuation of the series under the government of, I wouldn't say dictatorship, but government of Matthias Ruffert. Ladies and gentlemen, on the official government website of our distinguished guest, his visit to Germany was announced with the following words: the upcoming working visit of the Czech foreign minister in Germany follows the recent trend of making up solid Czech-German relations, focused on friendly neighborhood in a united Europe. I repeat, friendly neighborhood in a united Europe. This is a promise I not only welcome very warmly, but I fully and enthusiastically subscribe to. We are far from a united Europe yet. The financial crisis, almost forgotten, and the refugee crisis shatter the European Union. No solution in sight. Calls for solidarity across Europe are fading. 6 days from now, the German Federal Constitutional Court will give its final judgment on the OMT case. You may know what it is about. It's the constitutionality of the announcement of the president of the European Central Bank to purchase unlimited sovereign bonds on the euro market. The Constitutional Court had some problems with this announcement, and it gave the case to Luxembourg, and the Court of Justice in Luxembourg said, it's okay. And now Karlsruhe will have to give its judgment. Would it conclude that it follows the preliminary ruling of the Court of Justice in Luxembourg, or would it continue to have some doubts about the constitutionality and the compatibility of this announcement of Draghi with the EU law and the national constitution? If the German Constitutional Court says yes, and I very much hope so, the problem is solved. If not, we would have a new crisis, this time a constitutional crisis, with Germany at the origin. And this is not what we strive to. So 8 days from now, so 2 days later, as you all know, we will have the British referendum. and the British people will vote on the in or the out. We hope for a yes. And we call loudly, Britain, please stay. We are all citizens of the Union, unified in diversity. But if there is any strength, it is based upon this unity. Our common values, a degree of solidarity we should boost, not question. So we say, Britain, please stay. The global challenges we are facing do not allow us to play national. Each of our countries is nothing at the global scale without the Union. Together only we can play a role. But some British hesitate, and the markets seem to get nervous. What happens after the referendum? Nothing will change in the near future. There will be negotiations in both cases, whatever the outcome of the referendum will be. These negotiations will last for 2 years at least, and nobody can say what the result will be. If they vote in, we must negotiate the amendments of the treaties to adapt them to the conditions which have been agreed among the governments to make the referendum possible. If they vote no and out, the procedures of Article 50 of the Treaty of the Union have to be followed. This means Britain would first have to notify that it wishes to withdraw from the Union. Then an agreement has to be negotiated on the conditions of this withdrawal. If there's no agreement after 2 years between the EU and Britain, probably negotiations with the new British government, the UK will be out. Nobody believes, however, that this is an option, just to be out without any agreement. The whole debate on British membership and its future conditions in both cases, however, make the EU weaker and weaker. Here's our problem. Eurosceptics get ground. People forget that the greatest achievement of civilization, European integration, is at risk, and peace is at risk between the EU member states as we enjoy it since 70 years now. This is more than worrying. What is the role of Germany? Germany lives in a peaceful period and in a period of strength, thanks to the EU, while the EU is getting weaker and weaker. Yes, this is a paradox, a political paradox that needs to be overcome for the sake of Europe and the citizens of the Union altogether. Dear Minister, you will explain us now how to overcome this paradox. We are thrilled to hear and discuss your views. And I'm sure that we will learn a lot from this discussion. That might lead us to the roots of the European idea, the European dream. Ladies and gentlemen, born on 6 September 1956, Lubomír Zaorálek graduated in philosophy from Jan Evangelista Purkyně University in Brno. Yeah? I should learn a bit more of Czech language. He first worked as a dramaturg at the Ostrava studio of the Czechoslovak television. Before, he worked for the Czechoslovak Socialist Party and served at the Ostrava City Council. During the Velvet Revolution in November 1989, he participated at the Civic Forum. He is one of its founders even, and representatives appointed to the Czechoslovak Federal Assembly in January 1990. At that time, he also joined the staff of the philosophy department of the Ostrava University, teaching, as my vice president already said, teaching political philosophy, current philosophy, ethics, and Czech political thought of the 19th and 20th centuries. In 1996, he was elected to the Chamber of Deputies of the Parliament of the Czech Republic for the first time. In 1998, he was elected the Deputy Chair of the Czech Social Democratic Party, and since 2002, he was the party's Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs, already Shadow Minister in 2002. And from that time until 2006, he was also a leading figure in the Czech Parliament, in being the chairman of the Chamber of Deputies and later the deputy chairman. On the 29th of January 2014, Lubomír Zaorálek was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. So much to explain why he is the exactly right person now to deal with this philosophical problem, how to manage a paradox. In the name of all the students, colleagues, and other distinguished guests present here in the Senate Hall of our university, and outside, those following this video stream of this event, let me welcome you and thank you very warmly for coming to Berlin and for sharing your ideas with us. We are looking forward to listen to you. Dear Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Would you come here?
Schönen Dank, Herr Professor. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, erlauben Sie mir am Anfang meiner Rede an der berühmten Humboldt-Universität etwas persönlich zu sein. Diese Universität, die Möglichkeit hier mit Ihnen meine Ideen über Europa, Mitteleuropa, Deutschland, Tschechien zu teilen, bedeutet für mich sehr viel. Sogar so viel, dass ich der Versuchung nicht widerstehen kann, zumindest ein paar Sätze hier auf Deutsch zu sagen. Die deutsche Sprache war für lange Zeit ein großartiger Verbündeter für mich, mit dessen Hilfe ich mir die Welt in den Zeiten des Kalten Krieges zumindest intellektuell erschlossen habe. Auf diese Art und Weise möchte ich der deutschen Sprache meinen Dank erweisen. And now, allow me, I would like to tell you something on the beginning here in Unter den Linden, because I know that this part of Berlin was part of former East Berlin. Allow me to start with something from my personal life. This may sound strangely coming from a foreign minister, but I would like to tell you that I had not visited any foreign country before the age of 33. I hadn't even tried. I was like my father that way. He was a doctor, medicine doctor. He loved foreign languages. He loved world literature. And yet, he never traveled. Imagine it was during normalization times. I once asked him if he regrets never seeing foreign lands. He replied, No. I wouldn't know what to say if people started to talk about Czechoslovakia. What we have here is unbearable, but still, I can't travel abroad and smear or vilify my country. So it happened that, long before I set foot in your country, I got to know Germany through its literature and philosophy. It's very strange. It was only after the fall of the Berlin Wall that I visited the scene of Goethe's Walpurgisnacht in Brocken, in Hart, that I saw the Lorelei I knew from Heinrich Heine and Brentano, or the house of Buddenbrooks in Lübeck, and many other places in your country. It was fascinating for me when I crisscrossed many times. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not just a geopolitical turning point. It was a moment that changed completely my life. The Warsaw Pact may have lost the Cold War, but I felt as a victor. The freedom that reeled through the ruins of the Berlin Wall promised genuine emancipation, personal, political, intellectual, not just economic or political liberalization, but freedom to create something new, to aspire for more authentic democracy, to build a new polis. In international relations, the end of the Cold War promised a global order based on dialogue and multilateral cooperation. But, as Immanuel Kant reminds us, what matters in revolutions is what spectators or observers make of them. The French Revolution and the ideals of the Enlightenment inspired all Europeans to seek change in their own lives and their own societies. The storming of the Bastille, this famous attack on Bastille, was seen as an opportunity for all mankind. This, according to Kant, is what distinguishes historical breakthroughs from mere episodes. I had often wondered whether the events of 1989 had a similar effect in the West. Had they also inspired a yearning, longing for change? Were they also seen as an opportunity to consider the problems of Western democracies or the tendencies toward financial oligarchy and social inequality of neoliberal capitalism? In retrospect, sorry, I think not. Francis Fukuyama in these years proclaimed the end of history, and most of us accepted it, but drew the wrong lesson from it. Maybe Fukuyama and Hegel, because Hegel also spoke about the end of history in his books, maybe Fukuyama and Hegel was right, or both were right. But our mistake was that we mistook this end of history for a final victory of liberal democracy once for all. One of the consequences of our hubris was that we started taking everything for granted instead of taking care of mutual respect, taking care of maintenance of trust, communication, communicative action, legitimacy of power. To cut it short, our mistake was that we read too much of Fukuyama and forgot to combine him with, for example, Jürgen Habermas, communicative action. Since it is Habermas who urges us to learn that not revolutions, but everyday work is maintaining the world of liberal democracy, and that we are responsible, as I understand Habermas, we are responsible for consequences of our activities, or maybe we are responsible for insufficient activities and similar. This imperative of Jürgen Habermas is fully in line with the philosophy of our Czechoslovak President Masaryk, who used to say that we should strive for a small revolution every day so that we avoid a big one, which is always a tragedy because it is a sign of time wasted. But maybe not revolution, but crisis could be the result of this wasting time. Ladies and gentlemen, probably also we have wasted some time and missed a lot of opportunities in the post-Cold War era, both in building Europe and in constructing a peaceful global order, which is also why we now find ourselves as the European Union in a state of uncertainty. Our challenges are well known, from this refugee and immigration crisis through Brexit to the rise of Eurosceptic populist parties and declines of Europe's global weight. What all of them have in common is the erosion of trust. Anthony Giddens explains trust as the achievement of modernity. The fact that they casually board a airplane without knowing anything about aviation physics or airplane construction. Europe now suffers from a profound crisis of trust as a result of social inequality, the decoupling of capital and labor, the detachment of global finance from the economy, and other disruptive effects of globalization. But the decline in trust is also of EU's own making, because it ceased to act as a force for a political emancipation, because it in certain way really ceased to act and also to push social progress. The EU is stuck in a technocratic mode. Sometimes it really lacks the connecting tissues that sustain trust. It has a common currency without a common fiscal and social policy. It has a borderless zone without a common asylum regime or integrated border protection. It has a set of institutions without democratic accountability and adequate public participation. It created a political space without a political identity. Maybe you have feeling that there are only words, but I'm convinced that we are in the midst of something like identity crisis. And it is this period which we are living now, when we are facing the danger of fragmentation and heterogeneity. And in the midst of this identity crisis, maybe it was also a task for Europe and European Union to deliver something like European identity. And now what we see, it's too difficult. And for this moment, is Europe not prepared to deliver this European identity? That is the reason why we are facing this rise of nationalist and tribal politics, which is in direct consequence and expression of this alienation. Because of this weakness, populism is coming. It is true that the EU was designed as an elite project. I am speaking about this situation on the beginning when de Gaulle and Adenauer are shaking hands on the beginning of this story. And maybe we have feeling that really this project started like conspiracy of elites. Maybe it's true. Maybe it was needed. to begin in this way, but it's sure that it cannot survive as such. The cycle of EU crisis will not be broken unless we close the gaps in public trust and democratic accountability. The other common element of our crisis is that neither can be solved without Germany. In 2011, Radek Sikorski declared here in Berlin, as Polish foreign minister, that he fears German power less than he fears German inactivity. In 2011, Germany was not yet comfortable in the shoes of European leadership. For 6 decades, Europeans had wished for German restraint. In this respect, the Eurozone crisis was a transformative event. It reconfigured the perception of German power. Expectations Europeans had of Germany rose to unprecedented levels. It caught everyone, including yourselves, by surprise. 5 years later, you should no longer be surprised by high expectations. In the past 5 years, you have demonstrated to your partners and to yourselves that you have the self-confidence, resources, and ingenuity to lead Europe. The EU has benefited from German action and leadership during the Eurozone crisis, the conflict in Ukraine, and in other situations. Therefore, I see no reason for fear or reason to fear either German power or German inactivity. What I fear is the sheer weight of German responsibility for the future of the European project. It is one thing to be a reluctant leader. It is quite another to be a solitary one, which is what Germany is now, even if rather by coincidence. German solitary leadership is unstable and unhealthy condition for Europe, and would become even more so should Britain leave the EU. This is the paradox. German strength is a measure of Europe's weakness. We will be more comfortable if we would have both at the same time, German strength and the European strength. It raises difficult questions. One of them, of course, is the German question. The centuries-old dilemma of geography, identity, and power. Should we be worried about the return of German Europe to one which Helmut Schmidt warned against? I remember this gathering. It was the conference of SPD, maybe not so, maybe I had opportunity to listen to this. And I remember that Helmut Schmidt really warned against any idea here to return to hegemony. German hegemony in Europe, because he said it's very dangerous and maybe anybody will be scared about it if it returns. Could German political dominance trigger a backlash from Eurozone debtor countries and other disaffected member states? To my mind, that is a wrong perspective and a wrong question. The German question of today is not the excessive concentration of German power. Rather, it is the excessive concentration of German responsibility. It is not a German question, but a European problem. And it is also reflects the weakness of Germany's partners and of the EU as a whole. In this context, allow me maybe to offer several pieces of advice, at the risk that giving advice is rather pressure for the advisor than to receiver. And advice is maybe mainly the gift for advisor, but I will try it. First, what is needed from your side? Take extra care and patience to consult your neighbors and partners, especially on decisions of strategic consequence that also affect their interests. It sometimes happens that we learn of your choices only after they are made public. One example was your government's decision last year to sidestep the Dublin regulation and open Germany's borders for unregistered refugees arriving via the Balkan route. Let me make myself clear. I respect Germany's compassionate response to the humanitarian emergency. I know the choice had to be quick. I can even understand its strategic logic given the pressure on the Western Balkan countries. Nonetheless, you should have consulted us. I raised this because it was not an isolated case. In your strategic decisions on energy policy and energy security, we would have welcomed more communication. This is unfortunate because Europeans have strong faith in German leadership. 66% of Europeans in 8 selected countries, according to a recent poll, as I read, but the figure would be even higher if your decisions were explained better. My second advice would be for Germany to strengthen the independence of community institutions. They ensure that EU policies are inclusive, coherent, and blind to asymmetries of power among member states. Which is why the impression of undue German influence, especially over the legislative proposals of the Commission, would be so troubling, particularly for smaller member states. European leadership implies responsibility for the very principles of cohesion and equality that community institutions are designed to protect. That is why it is so important to respect this. We must be honest. All member states are complicit in the renationalization of European governance. But we should also admit that the drift toward intergovernmental decisions started in the Eurozone crisis. You remember, with the intent to stabilize the Eurozone and encourage macroeconomic convergence, but with the understanding that political and fiscal integration would follow. But somewhere along the way, German leadership abandoned the pursuit of political integration. And maybe it's time to speak about it and to revive it. If somewhere in Europe overlapping crises will demand closer integration, we have also to speak about political integration. But it cannot be confined only to Eurozone. The operative word here is inclusive. The process of the European integration has to be inclusive, flexible and open-ended. Only in this way we have a chance to make it attractive and intelligible for people. And the third advice is self-evident. Exercise leadership by building consensus. This is what German diplomacy was always admired for. Its capacity for reconciling differences, for harnessing coalitions, for investing in durable partnership. I am convinced that my colleague Frank Walter is doing a very good job in this, but that's why when I'm speaking, I admire this competence in your diplomacy. I know what I'm speaking about. But it's really very important to keep this leadership by building consensus. Our leadership in Europe is more than action and rule setting. It is about cultivating trust. The more responsibility is placed on your shoulders, the more dependent you become on trusting partnership. Stronger partners and stronger partnerships are the only solution to the paradox of German strength and European weakness. This brings me maybe to the most difficult point, but also the most important. I have to speak about it. This is a state of relations between Germany and Central Europe, maybe between eastern and western parts of our Union. There are moments, not only in political, but also in personal relationships, when a single dispute triggers an irreversible dynamic of alienation, be it like in marriage or in married life. It feeds into partners' prejudices and frustrations. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Partners start convincing themselves that they do not really need each other, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It is a classic story of unintended breakups. I'm afraid of this tendency to start different narratives in both parts and to continue without mutual communication. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the critical moment in the dialogue between Western Europe and Central Europe. We must act now to stop the spiral of estrangement. A new divide would undo the efforts of the entire generation of Czechs and Poles, but also Germans and other Europeans. Even more importantly, it would deprive us of the strategic opportunities of future cooperation. And for the Czech foreign policy, and for me personally, there is no greater task and no greater challenge. That is why I must address the difficult issues head-on. Let me comment first on the substantive dispute, permanent quotas for refugee relocation and resettlement. From a policy standpoint, the Commission's proposal as they stand today are ill-designed. The reason for calling them ill-designed is not based on our reluctance to be solidary. It's based on the fear that with the help of automatic relocation mechanism, the EU may create a monster of precedent which will permanently enforce a standard response to any future migration crisis with unforeseeable consequences for the security and economies of all member states. Yet the flaws aren't confined just to the permanent relocation mechanism. The proposed sum of 250,000 euro per refugee not accepted, is a measure of just how out of the context the policy has become. Remember that average wages in the Czech Republic stands at less than 1,000 euro. Which doesn't mean that the Czech Republic rejects the principle that the EU needs a fairer system of burden sharing when it comes to immigration. We are aware of our responsibility. We stand ready to accommodate Syrian and refugees who need our protection, provided that the process is voluntary and provided that we design a mechanism that actually works. But the dispute is not just a matter of good or bad policy. It is also a matter of domestic politics in all EU member states. In the Czech Republic, implementation of mandatory quotas, again, the public's explicit opposition would inflict irreparable damage to the cause of European integration. The debate on the British future in the EU shows how debates on immigration can brutalize the climate in one democratic country. Maybe in Britain they are speaking about migration, but in reality that is a problem of free movement of people. But you know very well that they are using also this word migration also in this case. Sorry. But what is the fundament is very similar. We can follow how in the UK this fundamental problem is throwing ruling governing Conservative Party into a state of nearly civil war. Maybe you have opportunity to follow this declaration of some MPs of Conservative Party. I mean, when somebody said, one of the MPs said, I don't want to stab the Prime Minister in the back, I want to stab him in the front so I can see the expression of his face. And maybe there was some reaction from the side of different MPs, the supporter of Cameron, who said the rebels should be shot by the side of the road somewhere, maybe. So it's absolutely unbelievable for me how this race of emotions and how difficult it is probably to use figures and numbers and maybe to be rational in this atmosphere. I see this discussion in UK as important test also for us, how it is irrational, how it is important to be able to communicate with people and not to lose contact with them. My government has staked its political fortune on convincing our citizens to trust Europe. On that basis, we have brought the Czech Republic back into the core of European integration after a decade of isolation under right-wing cabinets. Implementation of the Commission's current proposals on permanent quotas would undercut all of our efforts. I don't want it. It's, as I said, main task to exclude this possibility to maybe to lose connection with public, but also to be partner European Commission and European institutions. It is a mirror image of your own domestic concerns here in Germany, that if other EU partners are not seen as contributing, if Germany is seen as bearing the brunt of the migration crisis, it will strengthen your own anti-European and anti-immigrant movements. Such a conflict of national imperative is not uncommon in the EU. In fact, it is the very essence of the EU politics, a byproduct of our interdependence. And it must be solved through compromise acceptable for all member states. This is the European way, a compromise that leaves everyone at the table equally unhappy, maybe not happy, but equally unhappy. It is what makes the EU such a unique project. So why are we still unable to break the stalemate over quotas? It is because the issue is no longer about policy or even about domestic politics. Quotas have turned into a subject of morality, of sweeping ethical claims and moral absolutes. On one side is this fundamental tenet and rule of principle, maybe characteristic base of the state and privilege to protect border, to gain control over territory, and to have control who can overstep the borders. It's one problem, and against this are these ethical claims and moral absolutes. How shall I respond? I would respond that practicality is an integral part of any ethical dilemma. That compassion and solidarity are only as good as our capacity to deliver solutions that work, that the morality of our action must also be judged by the sustainability of our policies. Maybe William James could be maybe author of this. I would also respond by rejecting the premise that there is only one way of enacting European solidarity, that the respect for dissenting views and public opinion should be at the core of Europe's liberal order. That is why the issue of quotas spiraled into a much wider conflict. It feeds into our prejudices and constructed narratives of the other. It reinforces your image of a backward and xenophobic East and our image of an imperial and patronizing West. The debate has exposed just much we still misunderstand each other, but perhaps there is a silver lining. Every cloud has a silver lining. At least we are now aware of where the gaps lie. We now know that we must work hard to bridge them. We now know that we must have this conversation and overcome cheap stereotypes. In my view, the roots of our present misunderstanding lie elsewhere. They stem from different experience and perceptions of the global transformations that took place since 1989. The central fact here is that Central Europe is returned to the West, coincided with the dawn of post-Western world. The effects of this contradiction haunt us today. To explain my argument, let me return to 1989. As I said, the revolutions probably looked very different from the other side of the crumbling wall. For many of us in former Czechoslovakia, it was a moment of opportunity for change and self-improvement. The conclusion drawn by Western democracies was exactly the opposite. 1989 served to confirm that there is no reason for change or self-improvement. This was only logical. There is no stronger legitimization than victory. This is how the concept of transition was born, as a framework for post-communist states to mature into the perfection of Western reality. Don't get me wrong. We will always be grateful for the assistance provided by Germany and other Western partners in the 1990s. However, looking back, it's hard not to see the distorting effects of a paradigm in which political creativity was reduced to the technocratic exercise of catching up or emulate the West. At the very moment of our freedom and emancipation, we discovered that all social dilemmas were effectively settled, and all that was left for us to put these solutions into practice. Our job was simply to board the flight to the future of Western liberal democracies in full trust that the aircraft was flawlessly constructed and that our destination was right. Many of our political leaders bought into the thesis that history has ended and were intent on rushing to the end. In the Republic, our former President and Prime Minister Václav Klaus proclaimed that post-communist economies must become even more capitalist than the original. Even during the accession process, the EU's technocratic mode of change didn't leave much room for discussing alternative policies. This is why for post-communist states, 2004 marked the end of a transition, the point of destination, paradise on earth. Let's not forget that Europe was in fairly good condition in 2004. The ruptures of the past years have disillusioned many Europeans, none more than the Greeks. But for Central Europeans, the psychological implications of post-Western world are even more profound. This is because today's uncertainty invalidates the fundamental assumption of post-communist politics, that the progress is linear and inevitable. We have discovered that instead of the end of history, we have reached the end of the future. For the first time since 1989, change ceased to mean change for the better. For the first time since 1989, it looks plausible that our children will be worse off, that our future in the EU might entail less democracy, less prosperity, and less security. I am reminded of the ironic passage from the diaries of Franz Kafka. Did you really think that you would always be better and better? The pessimism today is not just an East European phenomenon. All EU member states are grappling with anxieties of decline. But for many old member states, the prospect of long-term stagnation is not completely new. They have experienced problems, economic problems, terrorism of the 1970s. Some have experienced the geopolitical decline of decolonization, and so on. For post-communist countries, politics without hope belonged to the communist times. Now we have to learn that democracies aren't protected from general crises and even physical insecurity. The TV screens showing incredible atrocities taking place in European capitals speak volume. And all this came to the fore in the quota debate. Visegrad countries are accused that they failed in their transition homework, that we have not done enough to internalize Western liberal values. But this criticism would be much more credible had our citizens not experienced their own disillusionment with the reality of Western societies. We have seen the weakness and failures of old member states in the face of economic and financial crises, as well as security and governance challenges, to say nothing of integrating immigrant communities. Places like Molenbeek or Saint-Denis in France became sort of warning codes all around the EU. Watching the rise of the far right across Europe, we have realized that democracy, also in old member states, is just as polarized and vulnerable as ours. In this context, it cannot come as a surprise that our citizens' faith in the judgment of Brussels institutions and Western governments is not as strong as it once was. Our governments are skeptical to trust EU institutions with another technocratic solution, if it will be only technocratic, that ignores the concerns of the public and lacks adequate appreciation of context and consequences. Managing immigration may be the defining challenge of our time. Once again, our partners are asking us to board a flight, and we will. We are aware of our responsibility, but this time around we must be consulted on the flight plan and the destination. Ladies and gentlemen, the point of my argument is not meant to assign blame, but to underline that we must all work harder to overcome our frustration and misunderstandings. Let me therefore suggest some principles for moving forward in our political dialogue. First, we must refocus our efforts back onto substance. It means we shall put forward common pragmatic actions instead of getting stuck in theoretical and moral disputes. The results will be what will be count. Second, we must come to terms with the fact that we disagree on certain issues, and that is a sign of healthy debate rather than moral failings or political sabotage. At the same time, that is my third point, we should all exercise a basic sense of perspective and not exaggerate our differences. Ladies and gentlemen, we must widen our horizons and see beyond our current disputes. A forward-looking perspective will reveal enormous and untapped potential of our cooperation, not just in trade, security, or energy, but in truly strategic terms. To work together to reinvigorate the European project and realize the promise of the freedom associated with 1989. If we look beyond the disputes of the day, we may find that Visegrad countries, and the Czech Republic in particular, are Germany's natural strategic partners in Europe. These are economies with scope for future growth, countries that share many structural interests with Germany, and societies that, despite a troubled history, have a special affinity for Germany and Germans. If we unlock its full potential, strategic cooperation between Germany and Visegrad could yet become a driver of EU's political and economical renewal, not unlike the French-German tandem that powered European integration for much of post-war history. In this regard, the Czech Republic feels a special sense of responsibility for ensuring that we do not allow our present misunderstandings to foreclose our common future. So what does the Czech Republic bring to the table? First, I believe the stability of our democratic institutions. In today's volatile climate, we have also some tensions in our coalition, but I'm convinced that we are able to overcome this. And at the time when liberal democracy is challenged in many EU member states, I believe the Czech democratic institutions remain resilient. The Czech Republic government also brings to the table its strong commitment to this fundamental notion, pooling responsibility. It's something what I see as a fundament of this, all this European integration, for this whole European integration process after the Second World War. Though we are not part of the Eurozone, we support further pooling of sovereignty in key areas, from security policy to energy or the single market. To keep the idea of European integration process vivid, we must learn where we can get for our common actions real support from our publics. I read this declaration of your Minister of Finance, Wolfgang Schäuble, and it seems to me it's very interesting what he said, that we have to follow very carefully what happened in UK. It's maybe we have to take it as warning and wake-up call. We must not respond to this by pushing for deeper integration at any case. It wouldn't make sense to respond immediately after referendum by asking for more Europe and so. We have to know why we are integrating. For example, maybe I can offer something concrete. I can imagine that we will start to speak that we need to integrate in defense and security. I can imagine it could be attractive for people. It's something which people can understand, which could be intelligible for people. We are able to explain it. It's impossible only to say, maybe now, I don't know what will be the result in 23rd of June, but in any case, I'm convinced that we have not only to reflect the situation, but also to give, maybe also to give the situation as warning, and to know that it's impossible to continue like this and to decide about further stuff without public support. And this maybe this defense, security field is concrete example when I am convinced we can attract people and convince people. And this is something on which we are ready to cooperate. And in any case, because in any case we have to find way forward. These commonalities which we have, I'm convinced, between Czech and German politics are the foundation of our bilateral strategic dialogue, which was launched last year. The adjective of strategic is particularly pertinent here. It refers to the fact that our agenda transcends bilateral or even regional issues. It speaks about our ambition to jointly shape Europe's future. It is also how I envisage the role of the Czech Republic in the context of Visegrad cooperation, as working tirelessly to rebuild trust and bring Germany and Visegrad closer together. I strongly reject any tendencies to position Visegrad as a counterbalance to Germany or the core of EU integration. From the Czech perspective, Visegrad cooperation is only meaningful in the European framework and in strong partnership with Germany. To paraphrase your Chancellor, if the Visegrad Group is ever aimed against Germany or the European project, that would no longer be my Visegrad. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by returning to the title of my presentation, The Paradox of German Strength and European Weakness. As I have said, Germany needs stronger partners and stronger partnerships to overcome it. And Europe deserves a strong European Union. And we, your Czech neighbors, are ready to explore with you how to make the EU so strong and attractive again. In such a way that people like my father, who unfortunately didn't experience the return of the freedom to my country, would be proud of our Czech contribution to the future of Europe. I know my father was a solid and firm man, but I know that there are points in history when all that is solid melts into air. The question is, will 2016 be one of these moments? It mustn't happen. I am deeply convinced that we have our fate in our hands. Thank you.
Dear Minister, many, many thanks for this very thoughtful and deep-rooted speech with so many important points included, starting with the identity, European identity, which, of course, was a big problem for, I believe, all the history of the European integration. To build up European identity, who can do this? It is very difficult, but what you now say, that to strengthen partnership, to communicate more, to consult each other, and feel that Europe means thinking together, talking together. I think this could become part of European identity.
I hope that this speech was not too depressive, you are not too much tired, but I feel obliged also to speak about things which are not so unpleasant, but not to crush on you or to depress you, but only to look for some way how to go out of this. And maybe you understand that my main message was that I am very glad that in these days we are really very good neighbors. I'm convinced that we have excellent relations and very open exchange of views. And my concrete experience from last months and days is that we are really able also to find a way how to communicate on points when we have different approaches. That's why I'm so open, because I have very positive experience from your side that you are open to discuss any issue. That's why I hope that this end of my speech was positive enough, maybe to not to crash yourself, not to cripple.
No, sure. My impression is that there is no depression.
Yeah, no.
Yeah? So, please, we could have a poll. Who is depressed now after? No, we just skip this.
Maybe it's concrete, maybe how to find out this.
I thought it's much more the opposite. It's showing a way forward. Communicate, and you start with your speech now. A communication, and you try to raise understanding for specific problems we in Germany might not see. As for the refugees, quotas, this is a point to discuss. I'm sure there are different opinions, but to show what is behind the resistance in your republic, it is the starting point for understanding and finding solutions. Absolutely. And not just shout to others and speak on others, but just to speak with each other. I would wish that the German government would be here completely, without exception, but also that the German people have listened to your speech. And so we can start the communication. And that's what I think is time for now. Is there in this room anybody who breaks the ice and is ready to raise the first question, give a comment, and start communication? Wonderful, a young man down there. Please give your name and then give your comment.
Mariusz Ruszel, Rzeszów University of Technology. I would like about energy policy issues because you said a lot about trust a lot about solidarity. So I would like to ask, do we need Nord Stream 2nd?
Do we need what?
Do we need Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Nord Stream.
Stream, no, you know, I can only repeat our official position. We are convinced that we can't bypass Ukraine in this case. We have also something like common Visegrad position to Nord Stream, and maybe there is some task which is now was put for the European Commission to find out if this project is in line or in contradiction with the European Energy Union. Maybe we need to have answer on this question, and then we will continue. But official position of Visegrad countries that we need to differentiate our sources. We have to create system which will make us more independent in supplies of energy, and that Nord Stream is in contradiction with this request. On the other hand, I can tell you that things are not easy, because now maybe you know that we have also some agreement between Poland and the Czech Republic to build pipeline Stork 2, and but things are changing, because we have, maybe I can say it, that there is some information that Poland's position is changing, and probably that it will be impossible to complete this project. That's but the probable reason is also that Poland is frightened that also this Stork 2 project could be connected with the supplies of gas from Russia, and it's something that because it's not enough differentiating or creating different sources of energy. It's easy. It's clear that it's not. It will be not easy to communicate, although our Polish partners, what to do if we will not accept this plan, which was maybe we have consensus about it. But maybe in last days, situation is changing. It's clear that it's not. It's a difficult problem also for the future. But speaking about Nord Stream, I can only repeat what is the official position of my Prime Minister and my government.
Thank you. Perhaps this is an example for why you ask for a strong European energy policy, and some at the European levels, a common policy, which means a policy which respects the interests of other member states. So that could perhaps the way for a solution in this issue too. But we are far from having a common European energy policy. So there's some room for improvement, perhaps. Is it?
We are in permanent clash probably between the vested interests and national interests on one side, and this striving to build our policy on our common interests. And it's clear that this striving is not black and white, and that in any of this issue, if we go deeply, it's clear that it's not so easy to find a solution. And there is a mixture, and it is intermingled, this national interest and also our, maybe you know that our task is to create common European energy union, but it's easy only on the paper. In reality, it's a very difficult task really to maybe to prefer this common interest and to favor this and not to split on these national positions. And it's something which is a matter of our everyday work, and it's not easy.
Indeed, there are some specific problems from the German point of view on the nuclear energy and the French specific interests in this field. So there's a lot of room for a lot of communication among the member states. So any further question or comment, for instance, on the refugee quota policy? Yes, there are two. One first, and we follow immediately and take the two questions together, please.
First of all, thank you very much for your speech. And I would like to say something from the Polish perspective as well. And I would like to ask one question. You were talking about a stronger partnership between the Visegrad Group and Germany. And my question is, what should be that partnership based on? Because I have the feeling that the real partnership should be based on a principle of solidarity. And nowadays, we didn't get an answer from a Visegrad Group that would answer the question, what kind of measure does the Visegrad Group want to take to overcome the crisis? Because I've got the feeling that, for example, the Polish government is argumenting it wrongly by saying that such countries as Middle Europe countries can accept only such refugees that are culturally similar to them, which I think it's a bit unclear, because when we compare the situation between the refugee crisis and the Second World War, because we are saying that the refugee crisis is the most dangerous crisis after the Second World War, we have to say that Poles have 2 million of refugees, and 160,000 of them were in Iran, which is a complete different country with a complete different culture. That's why I think that we cannot follow such an argument that we can only accept refugees with common cultural roots. That's why I would like you to answer the question about what measures do we need to take. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It goes to the core of the issue, of course, in many respects. We take also the second question, and then we come to...
Yeah, hi, Mr. Zaorálek. Thank you very much for your talk. And I myself, I'm a student from the United Kingdom, obviously quite interesting times. Personally, I'm very in favor of the European Union, its institutions. However, one of the things that really bugs me and many other people in the United Kingdom is the fact that the European Union and its institutions are always, portrayed as this perfect utopian system where, there's no flaws in it. I mean, for example, there's an obvious democratic deficit. I mean, studies have shown, for example, that only 11% of the citizens of the UK know who their elected representative in the European Parliament is, as opposed to 78% for the normal members of Parliament. So do you accept the fact, that, okay, integration is a great thing, the European Union has a lot of benefits, but do you accept yourself that, it's not all perfect, there are many things that need to be worked on, and I think a lot of people are angry because the political elites, they're refusing to accept this. I mean, certain aspects of the European Union, for example, the free movement of people is, it's a founding principle of the European Union, but the political, our Prime Minister denies publicly, that we have free movement of people and that you can't control immigration levels within the European Union. Now, I mean, obviously, personally, I love freedom of movement. I'm here as a result. But do you think that? I think it's counterproductive that it's not. You're not accepting the fact that there are weaknesses, and I think as a result, more people are getting disenfranchised, and it's just having the opposite effect, as recent polls are showing. So do you personally think that, there are a lot of things to work on within the European Union, and there are a lot of improvements to be made. And that's my question to you. Thank you.
I hoped that Minister had understood your question better than I did. I'm not sure. If it is possible, would you just concentrate this to the real point of your question, because it was difficult.
Yeah, sorry. So my question to you is, I mean, yes, the European Union is great, many benefits, but do you think there are, you know, areas to improve on, and do you accept that it does have faults?
Yeah. So, is there room for improvement of the Union? And given there are a lot of problems and faults, yes, is it so much more what you...
well, in essence, are there improvements to be made in terms of, for example, being more democratic, being more representative, you know, and getting to the common people rather than, you know, the establishment say, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I will try to answer. Maybe I will start with this first question. Maybe it seems too brave to start speaking about tandem between Visegrad countries and Germany in these days. But I said also during this presentation that it's better to concentrate on the future and not only on our current problems and disputes. Maybe you remember that during this economical and financial crisis, we saw something like division between the south and the north, maybe, and I am convinced that we will be able to overcome this. And now we have new crises. Maybe, and during this, when I remember these disputes around Ukraine and Russia, there are also some division between countries where they tried to create unified position. And now we have migration crisis, and we have this, what I see as new division, maybe between the East and the West. And I'm asking, it was maybe one of the purposes of this address, that I'm asking not to overestimate this division and not to start speak about different mentalities and different cultures and different values. I am deeply convinced that we are mistaken if we'll start to make so strong generalization, because I'm trying, and it was maybe my main task, to show that there are some different stories in these Central East European countries. This story and this history is different, but it does not mean that we can't understand one another, and that there are some concrete reasons why, after so many years of isolation in our socialistic past, we have very limited experience with these people from the south. And maybe we were able to receive many refugees during the 90s in the time of Yugoslavia war, and maybe thousands also Muslims. But now this situation is new for us. People in our countries are seeing atrocities in Belgium, Paris, and there is something absolutely new. This experience that this process of integration was not successful in countries which are so experienced as France, Germany, and others. And it's not so easy now to explain people that we have to accept automatic mechanism, permanent relocated mechanism, which will decide every year on a number of people which we have to receive. I would like to tell you Czech position. Our Czech position is that we are ready to receive migrants also from Syria, Iraq, from Greece and Italy. We are ready to accept thousands and thousands refugees, but we want to make it on voluntary basis. something which has to stay in our hands, and it has to be the decision of current government. And what I see in the UK is concrete example how this privilege is characteristic base for states and for nationals which are living in these states. That this decision, who can come to my country, decision maybe to, and this also this competence to control borders and to have some responsibility for people which are coming to my country. It is probably very important for UK. We see that it is a danger that this problem could split the society, the Conservative Party, and maybe to bring catastrophic development for European Union. The first country could be leaving. And I would like to explain that maybe a little bit similar problem is what we are facing now in Central East European countries. We can't underestimate it. We need time. We need to elaborate politics which we are able to explain people in our countries. And at the same time, we are repeating that we are ready to cooperate. I'm convinced that there is no fundamental splitting between Central Europe and between West and between Germany. And I am here to try to convince you that there is no reason to say there is something which is dividing us. It would be a disaster to accept this position. That's why I am so brave to tell you that I am here to offer you fundamental cooperation, not only between Czech Republic and Germany, but for the future. Because first, I know that we have to overcome these disputes, we have to solve these problems, but I'm convinced, maybe it was said that this migration crisis is the biggest maybe collapse or biggest crisis after Second World War. I don't know if it is true. Maybe, yes, maybe not. Maybe we will be able during this year to calm down situation. Maybe this pact between European and Turkey will be working. Maybe we are able to create many agreements between North African countries and many other countries to create some system. We are working on it very hardly, and I hope that we are able during this to show that we are able to have this process under control. I would like maybe to ask you not overestimate this and not to speak about fundamental crisis and fundamental split. I'm convinced there are many what I can offer to you. I can offer you very big territory with 65 million people which are very good, very educated, very hardworking people which are very good partner for Germany. And also, maybe in Czech Republic, we have relatively decent economical growth in this year, very low unemployment on the level of 4.5%. I'm convinced we have educated people, and I'm convinced that it's something which is good opportunity also for German business. And maybe similarly, I can speak also about my Polish friends and so. That's why I would like to see this problem from long perspective and not to make any short-sighted decision. And I'm absolutely sure that it's reality, and I'm very close to reality when I'm offering that this cooperation between Visegrad, Central Europe countries and Germany has big potential. It's a big chance for us.
Thank you very much.
Speaking about UK, no, absolutely. I know that there are many flaws on the face of European Union. I know there are many. I can tell you that when I'm visiting sometimes European Parliament, and when I am listening these speeches, and maybe I have feeling that everything is right in regular parliament. There are speeches and emotions and so, but sometimes I have feeling that something is not regular, something is not precise, or maybe there is some lack of accountability or responsibility. It seems to me that it is very, I have also very strange feeling that we are facing something like danger of alienation. I am not sure when now we are speaking about common candidate lists of parties for the whole Europe for the future. It also seems to me that it could be a step to alienate people to this process. There are many problems, but I am here not now to make summary of these problems which we have in the European Union. Now I would like also, now in this, I would like to be more positive. I am convinced that the European Union, with this notion of shared responsibility, it was a fascinating invention and project, maybe successful project, which was able really to be something which educated people. As maybe if in national states we have schools which are educated people to be good nationals, I am convinced that also after Second World War, European integrated project was something like European school for people in Europe. And this project was also successful. Maybe this project made chance for Germany to find a way how to continue in history, but also for France. This project, this European school, made chance for many French maybe to start to be also participated on global development of the world. It means it was a very effective project, and this imaginary European school was very effective to create new identity for Europeans. I said during this speech that I feel sorry that during this crisis we saw that this European school was not able to deliver European identity in this time of the crisis. But it does not mean that everything is lost. Only it means that for this situation, Europe was not equipped to manage this, and to offer this European identity is something which is able to solve this identity crisis. And what we see is something like return to national identities and maybe the danger of isolationism and this far-right populism and so. But it's reality, it's very imperfect. On the other hand, I'm deeply convinced that we have no other option. In Czech Republic, we are living from this net of contacts. We are living from this culturally and economically. 83% of our economic trade and export is with the European Union. But maybe we will be lost if we will isolate. That's why I know there are many flaws, but I see no other option than to speak how to improve this project and how to continue and keep this principle of shared responsibility vivid for the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I see your ambassador who tells me that your plane is waiting for you and will not wait too long. So I'm forced by facts that to conclude now. And before I conclude, finally, I, of course, have to not only thank you, but express my gratitude with a little book, which is on the Humboldt speeches on Europe, the first series, including Václav Klaus. Yeah. I hope so. I hope so. I'm not sure about it, but let's not check now, but later. And I think this discussion, this communication is just started with your speech now, and it will continue. And I very warmly wish so, that we come together and have a stronger partnership, Germany, Visegrad, to the benefit of the European Union and its citizens. Thank you very much indeed, and please come back here.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for your willingness to listen to this Czech story and about Czech and German relations. Thank you, and good luck. All the best.
Thank you.